If you work at a tech company that's at least doing $3 million in revenue, you likely are having two main problems with your lead management process. There's going to be a problem with marketing and there's going to be a problem with sales. Marketing doesn't know how much money to spend in order to get a reliable amount of leads on each platform that they advertise on. And then the sales side isn't getting those leads as quick as they should so that they can call them immediately and have a higher chance of converting them. That all comes from having a poor lead management system. So if you haven't looked me up already on LinkedIn, which is where the majority of my following is at this point in time, I have worked for a number of these unicorn tech companies before starting this consulting firm that we've now been running for 3 years. And we primarily work with tech companies at least at 3 million in revenue and help them scale to 100 million and beyond. So some of those companies would be Vercel, which is valued currently at $9 billion. Worked at Divvy that was acquired by Bill.com for $2.5 billion. I was there during the acquisition. And I've worked for Podium that's currently valued at $3.2 billion, another tech startup here in Utah. I've also worked for a public company, Health Equity, much, much larger than all of them as far as valuation is concerned. So an enterprise level company, as well as Walmart e-commerce. So Fortune 1 company in the world, did some Salesforce work there for them as well. And then beyond that, tons of startups since running this consulting firm. So just saying all that to let you know that I have experience working with these high performing tech companies. And it's given me the privilege to basically see what they do every single time and then copy paste that same idea into these startups that we work with so that they can also have that confidence to know these are what the other people are doing that are scaling much larger than you or are much larger than you currently that you should be copying, right? So to start that conversation off, before I jump into this diagram, I want to go through the principles of how these companies think. So that way it helps us identify really how we should build it for your company if we partner up together. Okay. So there's 5 main principles I can think of when I think of these high performing tech companies we've worked with that they do every single time. Okay. So number 1 is being control. So at these companies, they're not going to be guessing where any of these leads come from. They know for a certainty that they came from X lead source. So, hey, if I'm going to spend $1,000 a day on Facebook or $1,000 a day on LinkedIn, then I'm going to know exactly where every single one of those dollars goes and what that's going to return us. So number 1 is knowing exactly where these things come from. They don't make gut decisions based on, I think we're spending $20,000 a month on marketing. And I think, gut feeling, the majority of those come from Facebook. It's no longer that type of idea. It is a for surety. They go and they have all this piped in and running this way so that they can for sure pull a report and show the facts to leadership. So they're not guessing. They're actually saying, look at the facts. Here's everything that's come in. We know it's accurate. And for that reason, we know that Meta is the best performing marketing channel. So what is it that we're doing there that we can replicate on some of these other channels? So control is number 1. Number 2 is visibility. I kind of talked about that. They're not going to be spending a bunch of time going to all these different platforms that they advertise on to go and check 9 different systems to see how things are running. They're just not spending time to do that. That's a huge waste of time, huge waste of money. And when you're in that growth stage startup, you're likely doing that. And it kind of happens for 2 reasons. One reason is you're usually strapped, right? Like you're strapped on cash or you're strapped on employees. You're either bootstrapping or you've raised. Either way, you're trying to figure out how you can use the best of that money. And so you kind of just have people fill in the gaps. And so it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is something to be recognized that you need to have a system that's going to do this 100% accurate every single time, work no matter what. It doesn't take PTO. It's never sick, right? So it's always going to be working. And it's extremely cheap in comparison to human labor to have somebody do that. So visibility, as well as some time and money there, they're not going to be going to do that. They want this in one spot, which is, again, Salesforce, their CRM. They can pull one report to view all of those metrics in one place. 3 is trusting the data. They're not going to be spending time arguing over numbers. They trust that the CRM is basically the brain of the company at this point. So anything business health related is piped into our CRM. We look at one report in the CRM. We're not going to be going off all these different reports from Excel and Google Sheets and what Facebook has to say. It's Salesforce or it doesn't exist, right? Or your CRM or it doesn't exist if you're on a different one. Scalability, they do not rebuild the process every quarter. They're going to try to design this once and then be done with it, right? Things are going to change. You guys are going to grow. There's going to be growing pains, of course, and you will have to adapt and we will have to modify things as they go. But having a foundation is the point I'm trying to make, is making all the difference for us. So we take the time to think this out once, we map it out like we're doing here on a diagram, we think through it, we architect it, and then we build it. Instead of just feeling like we have to be reactive towards everything, you build something, you spend a bunch of time on it, maybe it breaks a bunch of stuff, it doesn't work, and then you rebuild it. All that stuff starts to add up a bunch of time and money, right? And again, growth stage is not the end of the world. You're trying to fill the gaps. I get it. So sometimes those things are necessary, but when we can finally have some breathing room right around that 3 million mark, and you can afford to hire other people to come in and do this that have the expertise to do it, that's what you should be spending your money on. That's the way they're going to be thinking about it. And then lastly is respecting people's time. Okay. So you're hiring these people to do a specific task to help you build your company. So you're hiring a CTO or a VP of sales to specifically help in that capacity. You're not hiring them to do a bunch of admin work that we could just automate inside of one of these platforms for them. And again, you're in growth stage startup. So you have these people that come in, they're really ambitious, they want to do it. And so if they have the time, they'll just do it, right? And it's kind of okay, like they fill the gap, but again, it's a lot of time and money wasted because the thing you hired them to do is think about high level strategy of what they did at their last company that's going to help you grow. You don't want them in the weeds doing a bunch of admin tasks that you could outsource or even just hire someone in-house to do for much cheaper than their rate. So when we think about that, you got to be converting how much you pay them into hourly rates to make that make sense. So an example might be if we pay somebody $200K a year and they have whatever that might be, $100 an hour rate, if we convert that to an hourly rate, versus somebody that gets paid $50K a year and they're getting paid more of like a $25 an hour rate, it would be dumb to have the guy with the $100 rate do admin tasks that the person at 25 could do for them, right? So don't make humans the routers, cleaners, integrators. They have systems that do all that. This saves massive amounts of time and money to be spent on actual priorities. So they spend time on actual strategy to do this, okay? Okay, awesome. Glad we got that out of the way. Now we're going to dive into how you would actually do this, all right? So we have this diagram here. Again, this is a foundation of every company that ever scales past 100 million of more or less what they try to do here. And I'm going to talk about some things in between of how you can think about it for your business too. So to make sure we're all aligned, I'm going to start at the very beginning. Should be really fun kind of exercise at the beginning here, okay? So there's obviously people out there in the world. There's 8 billion of us, and you want to advertise to these people to figure out which ones are interested in your product or your service, okay? So we have this advertising bucket. There's digital advertising and there's physical advertising. So digital are going to be things like Meta and Instagram, Google, LinkedIn, Twitter or X, Snapchat, Pinterest. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of all these platforms that we could potentially digitally do marketing on. Physical is going to be stuff like referrals and trade shows and going to lunches with people and trying to network with them that way. There's going to be, maybe physical advertising. Maybe you actually spend some time, depending if you're a product-based or service-based. Service-based businesses, you might actually go out and try to advertise to people. You go to events, you do stuff in print if you might want to do that. I don't know why you'd be spending a ton of money on that, but there might be some type of magazine or billboards that you want to do. You'll have Google reviews that you want to push people to, or reviews in general that you're leaving at different physical locations. You might have, again, depending on your business, you might have physical cars that get wrapped with like a vinyl wrap that advertises your services. So there's some examples of the two. You're basically doing these things to attract people to what it is that you sell and then try to weed out who's actually going to be interested, okay? This is where the problem comes in that we just identified. So now I've done all this advertising and there's all these different platforms or places that I'm going to have that data go to. So if I run ads on Meta, I now have all of my ads that I can look at there, how they're performing, who clicked on what, who engaged with what, how much time they spent staring at it, what they did with it, who those people were, right? So all that data is going to sit in Meta. Same goes for Instagram's kind of with Meta. So same idea. Google, if you have any type of like SEO stuff that you're trying to pump up, or if you're doing Google ads in general for click ads, You're going to have all this information sitting in these platforms: LinkedIn, Twitter, Snapchat. Down here for your physical stuff, you might be pushing people to like your website or a landing page. And you might even just have phone numbers sitting out there, depending on some type of the physical stuff that you guys might do. Billboards oftentimes have phone numbers on them because you'd be kind of psycho to scan like a QR code up there. So typically you'll see phone numbers on like cars and billboards and things like that. So you have all these places, is what we're trying to point out, where stuff goes. So you, as the growth stage startup, likely what is happening is you go to all these places and you try to figure out what one is doing the best. Well, this gets really tough because now I have 9, 12, 25 different places that I got to go check and then do some analysis on, either export that to like a Google sheet or an Excel sheet, and then try to make sense of it all. What am I spending over here? What's doing okay? What's like the dwell time on all this? How long are people staring at my stuff? How long are they watching the videos for? And then I got to figure that out, and this changes daily, as we know. Depending on how much you're spending as well, this could be changing really quickly. So you're trying to do this at a rate that you really just can't keep up with, but you do it anyway. And so you kind of always have this lag of like, well, this is what it said yesterday, but it could be different today. And so that's why you get into this feeling of like gut checking it. Like, well, I've been checking it the last 5 days and it kind of keeps coming back and saying like Facebook's the best one, which good, better, best. It's good. I mean, doing your best, but it's definitely not the way that you want to have this run in the future. It's just a huge waste of time, money, and you really don't get the facts. Okay. So what do we want to do to be able to get this all into Salesforce at the end of the day? Well, this is the main difference right here. Okay. So you kind of have two options, and this depends on the strategy you want to follow, but there's forms that you could have and there's landing pages you could have. You could also do both. I would say it kind of depends on how you want to run things. Now, forms are going to be things like on Meta, when I have somebody go and watch something of mine, I can have the option for them to fill out some type of form, which is their first name, their last name, the company, that kind of stuff. They fill out that form and then it will automatically create a lead. It doesn't send it to a website. It doesn't do anything like that. It just, somebody filled out the form and now it's technically a lead. Now I have to go back to Meta to get that lead. So I would have to pay attention to that channel and then either copy paste that information and bring it over to Salesforce, or email that to somebody, or have it get sent to an email inbox. I have to do something with that, or I just got to manually get in there every single day and Slack people and say, hey, we got 5 new leads. Here's the 5 new leads, right? And you can see already this is super inefficient because you're going to be spending all this time every single day with one person doing that you're paying to do that, which is crazy. But then 2, you're just not going to catch them on time either. So there's going to be these people that come in at midnight, at 11, when you're not working, and you're going to have to wait till the next day to even let them know that you got their request, or let them know that you're going to be calling them at a certain time. And then also you're going to have people that just get missed, or there's going to be typos when they copy paste stuff over. I see that a lot. And so this is a current way that you're doing it. It's super inefficient. You probably know that. But that's one option, is having this form. Okay. The second option is the landing page, where instead of having them fill out a form, you can send them to a specific landing page. This is nice. I'm not going to talk about it too much in this video, but if you are tracking UTMs, which you should also be doing, that I'll make a video on, the UTMs are nice because then they come in to a specific UTM preloaded landing page that you've created, and you can track specifically where they came from. You can see the first touch of that person, the last touch of that person, and it's going to help you identify, oh, we spent money on Google Ads. They clicked on something through Google Ads. They went to this landing page because of our Google Ads, and now they're a lead because of Google Ads. So this one worked, right? This campaign that we're running through Google Ads is working for us. So landing pages are nice for that. And this is where I see somewhat of a combo in most situations, but I've also seen people just do one or the other. There's not really a right or wrong here. Really where this comes into play is the integration being next, which is right here. And I'm going to tell you how we can get these things from your forms or from our landing pages and integrate that with the CRM that you're using Salesforce itself and or one of these other platforms. Okay. So If you fill out a form, it's still totally fine. You don't have to push them to a landing page. What you should do then is, depending on the platform you use, best practice, try to look for Salesforce doing this natively. Just think of it from a money standpoint, where if I can have Salesforce do this, then I don't have to spend more money on another tool out there to do this operation for me. So what I mean by this is, somebody goes to Facebook. I have an ad running on Facebook. They fill out my form, blah, blah, blah. Here's my name, company, phone number. As soon as that form's done, Salesforce, if there's a native integration for the platform you're using, like Facebook, it can take that information and then automatically create a lead inside of Salesforce for you right after they fill out that form. So instead of going to an inbox or you having to go to Facebook to go find this, it now goes directly to Salesforce. So it's like instantaneous that somebody filled this info out and now it's available inside of Salesforce for you to have your sales reps call them, right? And there's no typos, there's no like misinformation. There's only a typo if the person actually had a typo, but you don't have another middleman that potentially can cause a problem with a typo like that. Okay. So always look for some type of native integration first, whatever platform you're using, see if there's a native integration. Where you can check that is they have what an app store for Salesforce. It's actually called App Exchange, but it works just like your phone, like the App Store. And typically they just have like an app that you basically download and it integrates those two things. So whether that's like your MailChimp for your newsletter, or LinkedIn or whatever, they typically have an app. You download the app in Salesforce and then boom, you connect it up. It's pretty easy at that point. So always look for that first, I would say. Sometimes those apps have prices. A lot of the time they're free. Now, if you run into a weird situation where there's something out there that doesn't have a native integration, which does happen, there's these third-party tools you can use to do that integration for you. These are really popular, especially as you're growing. Zapier, people hate on this one, but honestly, I don't know why. I've worked at some like technical companies where they're very engineering forward. And sometimes I think when I've worked at those companies, they get a little prideful about, how you do things because they're engineers, right? And they design stuff for a living. They make products for a living. At those companies, I've kind of heard people hate on Zapier, but the reality is it's super DIY friendly. Like anybody could just go and use Zapier. They do a great job of just making it easy to use. I also love it because it's been around a really long time and they connect to basically every app out there. I think it's like 7,000 plus apps. So the chances of you not finding that app on there is pretty slim. If you use any type of popular app, it's likely going to be on there and integrates with it, which means I can go to Zapier and then on Zapier, it's going to work like a middleman. So I would say, hey, when I have Facebook over here and someone fills out a Facebook form, a lead form, it will then connect to Zapier and Zapier will then connect it to Salesforce all the way through. And you can control what it does. So, hey, when someone fills this out, what do you want me to do once it hits Zapier? Zapier, I want you to then create a lead for me inside of Salesforce. So it basically takes two different platforms that don't connect natively, and it sits in the middle as this middle guy to say, hey, these two need to get connected together so that we can complete this workflow. So it saves your butt every single time, right? So Zapier is a really cool one. And like I said, really DIY friendly. So if you want to try to do that yourself, Zapier is probably where I would go first. Again, I honestly have never really had any problems with them. I like using them. I think it's a good interface. Now, if you want to get cool and fancy and some of these other ones that people are trying to flex nowadays because they do a little bit more, you can code a little bit more with them. You can get more technical is basically what I'm saying. In my situation, I really haven't seen a situation where you've had to really rely on some of these technical ones at these startups. Maybe there's a situation here or there that you have to. But I almost feel like people use these other platforms almost playing into like the whole AI thing. Like AI is really big right now, still at the beginning of 2026. And I don't know, I feel like people sometimes just do it for that reason. It's almost like a flex. But they would be make.com. There's the N8N, and then there's also Tray.io. So this purple one's Make, Tray.io. I think they're Tray.ai now, and then N8N. All essentially do the same thing, which is just basically being a middleman of here's something that's happening. What do you want us to do? And what app do you want us to connect it to? And then we'll complete that workflow. So No matter what, there's a way to be able to do this. Okay. So if you have forms, you can do it. If you have a landing page, you can still do it. So when they hit your landing page, you can still push it through one of these if it doesn't connect directly to Salesforce, and it will push it into Salesforce. Now, once it's inside of Salesforce here, this is where we're going to have all of the lead details now. Okay. So everything should be in here. And if you remember those principles that we talked about at the beginning, the whole point of this is so that we can hit all 5 of these things, really. It's respecting people's time. It goes all through. It's all automated. That takes way less time and money to do. Scalability, once it's there, it's always going to work. No one takes PTO. No one gets sick. This thing just runs all the time. You can start to trust the data because you know that everything is getting piped into Salesforce and we have a true one look at how our leads are going. And now the biggest thing, you don't have to check 9 platforms. Okay. So you're not going to be scoping around trying to look to see which one's performing the best because it's all just going to be inside of Salesforce. So this is the foundation that you should be looking at in setting up. If you do not have this set up, this looks maybe a little daunting to you to do, or you haven't done it yet, or you just like some help doing it. You can click the link in the description below, and that will send you over to see if we're a good fit for you. We'll first do a strategy call, basically just see if our company can work well with your company. And if that answer is yes, then we can come in, we'll look at what you guys actually do with your lead management and then tailor it specifically to your business. So this is a general foundation, right? But not every business operates the same. They all tend to be a little bit different use cases for each one. And so that's really where we can come in and use our expertise to think through that with you and then build this out. We have a team, obviously, that would build this for you and work with you guys. So if that sounds more interesting than doing this on your own, click the link in the description. And then again, we can see if we're a good fit and look forward to speaking with you guys from there. Appreciate it.